Just what does it take for a young female broadcaster, especially the one who does news writing and news anchoring? Just what does it take for her to be successful? The story of a young yet so talented journalist will be yours. Just right ahead in this edition of African Fiesta, the 163rd so far, and it's reaching you live from Apex One Radio. My name is Ernest Kanjo Maxell is producing this show from Germany, precisely from the HO city of Varsity. I'll be right back with you. Meantime, thank you so much for watching the show. Belta Fonjo, you are in Cincinnati, Ohio, and thank you for your time, your fidelity, and of course for everything. This is African Fiesta. We're doing the 163rd edition of the show. 16 minutes to 12 here in the studio. We are gradually but steadily moving to the end of the show, but we will only come to the end when we must have listened to the great story, amazing one, of course, of Promise Akanteh. She is a journalist and newscaster par excellence. Without much ado, let's go to Yaounde at exactly 5:44 to say welcome to our next guest. Promise, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Promise, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Hi, Ernest. Thank you very much for having me. I'm so honored. I'm so privileged and go say flattered. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
How is Yaounde this evening? Could you just bring down the volume of your receiver?
Okay, let me try to do that down a little bit right now.
So, meantime, how is Yaounde this evening?
Yaounde is great. At least for today, there is no rain. The sky is bright. We had a really, really hot sun, but it is already getting to evening, so the temperatures are getting colder, but there's no rain.
Right. Beautiful. So, you're welcome to the show. It's our pleasure to have a colleague, of course, on this show to talk about her job. It's not usually the case. For how long have you been a journalist, Promise?
Talking about yourself, right?
I know.
I don't really ask people questions. So when I'm being interviewed, it feels a bit weird.
Exactly. That's the same thing I go through. I hate to be interviewed. My job is to interview people. So when I'm put on the other side of the glass, it becomes really difficult for me because I hate talking about myself. But I'm good at identifying talented people and talking to them. And Promise happens to be one of such people. So tell me, for how long have you been in journalism, Promise?
Well, talked officially on the radio, it's been 17 years. I began in 2000.
Could you just raise your volume? I can't get you properly.
I thought you said I should lower the volume, so I was thinking about
okay. Just get closer to your mouthpiece.
All right. So I began in the radio in 2003 officially.
Okay, that's a long time ago.
High school. That's a long time ago. Yeah, that's a long time ago. I know I might look younger than my normal age, but it's okay. I began in the radio in 2003. That was in community radio based in Chang in the west region of Cameroon. I was studying in university back then, and my hostel was close to the radio station. So in my talking of English and French, the manager back then was like, I said, okay. And that's how I started my radio adventure. But before then, in secondary school, I was one of the rare science students who was in the journalism club. So we had a journalism club in school. We would present the news on campus Mondays and Fridays during General Assembly. We'll do the news, smoke on in the quarter. And so it began like fun, then grew into a passion that got me really into it in 2003 in Chang. I went to Bamenda in Hot Cocoa. I'm not going to call the names of the release I've passed through, I think. I can call the names of the release I've passed through. So I went to Hot Cocoa in Bamenda, Abakwa FM, then came to Yaounde for bigger openings. You know, Yaounde is bigger than Bamenda, so I came to Yaounde for better openings, and here I am. So in 20 years on, and I'm practicing strong.
Do you have any professional who would have inspired you? I know a lot of young journalists get into the profession because they saw some iconic journalists doing a fantastic job and they got inspired.
Oh, really? I think that the first person who really got me into this job is my father. May so rest in perfect peace because he was a teacher, and when he comes back from work, he will go to sleep for his afternoon sleep, siesta, and then oblige us to listen to 3 p.m. news on the national radio.
Hmm.
And then when he gets up, we should tell him what we got from the news. So what I would do is to try to imitate the voices of the presenters. So I
Right.
was like, here is the news read by Charles Silver. There's the main points.
Hmm.
So I was still very young. I would say the main points, not knowing that they say mean points. So I but asked my father, like, why are they saying the main points and not the women points? You will now consider what when you understand.
That's an exciting one.
So yeah. So even when Glory Vanguard I was presenting, she will also say the main points. And then I would say, Daddy, Papa, she is a woman. Why is she still saying men points when she is a woman points? So that's how I developed a passion for always wanting to repeat. So I think I just had this beautiful memory that I will capture almost everything, then I'll reproduce how the journalist was reading the news at 3
Hmm.
o'clock, and then it just started growing as a passion. In the primary, I was repeating the news of my father. In secondary, I was now reading the news in the General Assembly
Hmm.
Mondays and Fridays. And then later in the university, I was in the radio, and at this age, I'm still at the radio.
Right. So I actually discovered you in the news. Uh, um, there are other spheres in the profession, but you chose to be in the news, and I know it's not easy because news has to do with writing and presenting. Much more about writing, and it's not very easy. A lot of young journalists shy away from news. If you are in it and doing what you're doing, I must commend your effort. Just describe how a typical news day looks like where you work.
I think a typical news day begins from the previous day because
Hmm.
we have to follow up what happened the previous day, the
Right.
following day. So in the morning, I get up by 4 a.m. I'm off. I have to follow up other international channels like BBC, CNN, France and CAD, African, all of those international channels to know what's
Hmm.
happening in the world. And then by 6, 7 a.m., I'm listening to local channels in the country, like
Okay.
in Yaounde as well, to know what's happening in the country because we cannot be everywhere at the same time. So I listen a lot of radio stations and watch a lot of TV to have information. So when we come to the office, um, we have a news conference that we then propose topics that can be treated and what angle to
Right.
treat. So if it's about a strike action, for example, we can propose an angle like to deal with those who are directly concerned and then have an expert who can explain why this is happening and why or what can be done for it not to happen again. So after the news conference, work is distributed. It's now up for you to look for your resource persons. It's either the man on the street for a vox pop or a specialist to give you an expert to you to handle in the news. So it's a little bit challenging because you have to collect those excerpts. People will say a whole lot of things without saying much. You come now, put it to the computer and start editing, removing all what is important
Right.
to use for your news. So it can be very challenging, but it's exciting when you get the final product.
Right. That's interesting. And you are kind of a central person because you anchor the news. Do you also go out for reporting?
Yeah, I'm the editor in chief, so normally I should do a lot of work. Even when I have to distribute work to my colleagues, I still have to make sure that they have the right resource person that they'll come back to you
Hmm.
for maybe a doctor or a lawyer or depending on what angle of story you give them as an editor in chief. So you are, I am always at times I have to go down to the field myself because maybe what I wanted for the news is not what the person will bring back. So I
Hmm.
might go to the field with the person so that when we come back, I direct you like, okay, this is the angle I want you to take. So you can take it like this. Like of recent when women in Yaounde organized a general cry that, let me put it that way, at the 20th May Boulevard. I had to go down with one of my colleagues so that when we came back, I told her that this is what I want the news
Okay.
to have as report. So I went down not for myself but for my colleagues so that we should come back with the exact elements that I want for the news.
Hmm. What are some of the difficulties you face as an editor? running a team of reporters?
One, maybe the fact that I look younger than them, but of course, because I'm older than them. So that is a small funny challenge. But then, you know that we are in Yaounde and it's a French-speaking town. So for us English-speaking journalists, we find some difficulties having these young persons. Like you go down to the street to do a vox pop, and you have like 10 people in front of you, and maybe just one person is English speaking,
Right.
and you need at least three voices in your news. Yes, it becomes challenging. And then having the specialists also who are English speaking, it sometimes be challenging. But we are happy that more and more we have people who speak the two languages. Like you have, let me say, a tourist who can speak in English and then in French. Yeah, it does, but it is still a lot of challenge to have the language issue broken down as a barrier. And then also having collaborators. At times some people just think that they cannot share their contacts with you, so you can get in touch with a colleague and like, please, do you have, I don't know, an economist or a geostrategist? And the colleague will like, I don't have. And then you listen to the colleagues and have someone talking in that person's saying, what did you say you don't have a contact? So it's a bit challenging, but well, we are coping with these challenges. It just makes us stronger.
Tell us about your rapport with your listeners. How do they react to your news, your newscast, your news presentation?
Well, I like the fact that my radio slogan is the listeners radio. So
Okay.
Royal FM is called the listeners radio. That's our slogan. And most of what we do, we throw it back to the people. Like I'm not only in the news, I also present programs. I have a
Okay.
debate program that I was supposed to come to your show earlier, but now
Right.
but I was on air. I had a debate program and it had a lot of participation. I don't know if you have time, you through the link and then you watch and you see a lot of participation and phone
Hmm.
calls and messages. I didn't even read some because they were really crazily hard. So I have a debate program, I have a health program, I have a cultural program that I run, and in each all they are all interactive so that the people should have their say in as I love to I love to put it, is we are trying to contribute our fair share to nation building, so we cannot leave anyone out. So listeners are a part and parcel of our radio station.
If in one of those other programs you host, a guest says something which you find really interesting and could be used for the news, do you cut out that feed and use?
Exactly. How did you know that? I do that a lot. Like
Okay.
I do. I do like when a guest is saying something, so like you just got me there. This is what happens when people are of the same view. So when a guest is saying something, I just like I noted like 1 minute 25 seconds, so that when I get to the entire program, I have to just like this is where the person was saying something that I need for my news, and I just cut it off. Like on today is World Diabetes Day. So I had received a doctor like I think 2 months ago, we're discussing diabetes. And then on Thursday, there was an association of young people launching an activity to educate people that diabetes can also affect children. And we tried to get to the doctor again, and he was very busy in the ward, in the theater. So he said he cannot answer. We went back to that program 2 months ago and we clipped what he was saying about diabetes and used it in the news.
Right.
And
Okay. That's interesting. Promise Akanteh is her name. She's a journalist, newscaster of Royal FM in Yaounde. She runs other shows as well. She's just mentioned that she's live on Apex One Radio, telling her story, which will definitely inspire other young girls out there who will look up to her and who would aspire to get into the noble profession. Yes, Promise.
can I just say something? Yes,
Yes.
please don't mind it. That's what happens among journalists. Now, as you said, inspire young girls. I'm just going to help, but to say this with my heart, in my hand on my heart, to say, young girls, if you are coming into this profession or whatever profession you want to take, please go for it because you are passionate about your job, and make sure that you acquire the skills, acquire the competencies, so that what is being employed is your head, your brain, and not your laps. I'm sorry I'm putting it like this, but I wish that we have young girls who work and who have their pride, who have dignity, and who are um, references because of their output. You should be good in what you're doing so that nobody will have anything to reproach you or to want to compare you to do things against your will just to protect your job. What should protect your job to be your brains. Be as intelligent as humanly possible, be as productive as humanly possible, and it begins by you being passionate about
Mhm.
what you're doing. Because if you love what you're doing, you're never going to work any day of your life. You just be catching fun, and others as you will see that it as working. Meanwhile, you're really catching fun.
Every professional in professions like music, film, and journalism aspire to get to somewhere. Musicians will definitely want to win the Grammys someday. Actors would want to get into a Hollywood movie someday. What are your aspirations? What are your ambitions?
Foundations, I wish to be on international screens, on the bigger screens, on television. I think television is very passionate. I wish to be on television screens, really very big screens, and then to host big international events because I'm also an MC along the line away from the studio. I'm an MC, I host other shows. So hosting an international show is definitely one of those that comes to my mind. And being on an international television screen is also a beautiful dream I know.
Sure.
But also, Ernest, before I leave you go, I'm seeing our time. We have a few more seconds to go.
Mhm.
I'm also doing time conscious. So I also wish to have as one of these things that I do away from the media is to teach, to lecture in a journalism school so that I get to motivate young people to know that be what you want to be if you just hold on to your dreams and work really hard and surround yourself with the right people with positive energies.
Promise,
So
I
definitely
must
maybe we share one
say
day.
you are brilliant and a wonderful professional. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Just before you go away, how can you be listened to?
Royal FM, we have our Facebook page, Royal FM as one
Mhm.
word, Royal FM as one word. And then Cameroon spelled in French as Cameroun. That's
Mhm.
Cameroon spelled in French for you, Royal FM Cameroon. And then you can also follow me on my Facebook page, Promise Akanteh. That's just as simple as that. And Twitter as well, Promise Akanteh. Yes. I don't know if WhatsApp is okay. No, no.
Promise. I promise that we'll have some more professional discussions like this. It was very amazing, and as a matter of fact, I learned so much from you as well. So thank you so much for joining us on the show. Yours is a noble profession. Congrats on the great job you are doing, and do have a fantastic rest of the weekend.